simple as that. Now, in Mahayana, so we take it deeper than simply staying with sensations as they arise. So if you look at Pratītyasamutpāda, so in its very, very simple definition and simple interpretation, it is just one thing leading to another thing. If this, then that. If not this, then not that. So apparently there's those, Shariputra, one of Buddha's major disciples. Before he met the Buddha, he and his friend Modgalyayana, who was also one of Buddha's two main disciples, he and his friend Modgalyayana, they were in search of the truth, and they told each other, well, you go looking, I'll go looking, and if one of us finds a good teacher, if one of us finds the way, we'll let the other know. So Shariputra was going around, and he happened to come across Assaji, who was a student of the Buddha. And just looking at Assaji, just the way Assaji carried himself, Shariputra was like, well, there's something here. So he approaches Assaji and says, who's your teacher? And Assaji said, it's the Buddha. That's a teacher. And Shariputra says, what does he teach? And Assaji says, it's very simple, actually. He teaches, if this happens, then that happens. If this doesn't happen, then that doesn't happen. So for Shariputra, for his practice was already so deep that just listening to this secondhand, he achieved stream entry. His self fell away. So just listening secondhand to this teaching, to the teaching of Pratītyasamutpāda. If this, then that. If not this, then not that. Was so powerful for Shariputra. So then, Shariputra told Modgalyayana, they both became students of the Buddha and continued their practice. So, and the Buddha, he talks about this when it comes to the 12 nidanas. It's a very central part of the teaching that, like we practiced last week, if contact happens, which is that, there's something that you're seeing, some sensation, right? The contact happens, then there's this pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral sensation, then that happens. If there's a pleasant sensation, then there is a craving that is like, oh, you want more of this. If it's an unpleasant situation, there's oh no, I don't want any of this. And if it's a neutral sensation, you just want to blank out, you get bored. So that's another more subtle kind of a craving. So, and if there is craving and you act on the craving, there is clinging. And that gives rise to an entire new cycle of the self coming into being. So now this whole thing, if you see, if this, then that. If that, then the next thing. So that's Pratītyasamutpāda. But also part of Pratītyasamutpāda is if not this, then not that. So that means that if you don't want this entire cycle of self to come up again, then all that needs to happen is say there is craving, right? Don't give rise to that clinging. If you're like, oh, I want this, don't go out and grab it. Then the clinging is not going to happen. And the whole next cycle is interrupted. So if not this, then not that. So it's not just causation, but it's also a way out. So Nagarjuna had this to say about Pratītyasamutpāda. So he says, whoever sees dependent arising also sees suffering and its arising and its cessation, as well as the path. I'm going to say that again. Whoever sees dependent arising also sees suffering and its arising and its cessation, as well as the path. So dependent arising, dependent co-arising. Pratītyasamutpāda, it's very powerful. Now, Nagarjuna also says, whatever is dependently co-arisen, that is explained to be emptiness. So this is our entry point into Mahayana. So whatever is dependently co-arisen, that is explained to be emptiness. So this is a definition of emptiness as simply Pratītyasamutpāda. So shunyata is nothing other than Pratītyasamutpāda. So on the one hand, you have the nidanas, which is a very concrete functioning. It's the very concrete aspect of Pratītyasamutpāda. On the other hand, emptiness, it is emptiness because of Pratītyasamutpāda. So there is the relative aspect of Pratītyasamutpāda, which is the 12 nidanas, and emptiness itself being Pratītyasamutpāda, that's the absolute aspect of Pratītyasamutpāda. So I want to pause there and see if you have any comments. Anything?
Sentha, can you say a little more about that?
About what?
Emptiness is Pratītyasamutpāda?
Sure. So emptiness, what is it that is empty of? It's empty of an independent self.
Okay.
So why is it empty of an independent self? Because it is interdependent. How is it interdependent? It is interdependent in that if this, then that. If not this, then not that. Dependent co-arising is interdependence. Interdependence means that it is empty of an independent self.
Okay, yeah.
Emptiness of an independent self is emptiness. Anybody else?
Emptiness of independent self.
Yes. So whenever I hear this, when this, then that, and it comes to mind that it's beyond causality, because causality always has a temporal difference. And when this, then that, and when not this, then not that, it's also correlation. And you know, in science, there's always a question, is it causation or correlation? And somehow this points to a timelessness co-arising, so without a time delay. So this is interesting, what always strikes me in the Buddhist way of framing causality. It's not just causality, it's something different, it's timeless. So maybe I wonder whether you can say something about the time difference in all of this.
Oh, that's a good question.
Okay, so time. So I haven't written, give me a second, I'm going to pull out another part of this very verse.
That's right, she
Let me
does.
see if I have it. This very verse also says this. It's so funny. I wasn't planning to include this, Michael, but give me a second. Let's see. All right, here it is. So Nagarjuna says, whatever is dependently co-arisen, that is explained to be emptiness. That, being a dependent designation itself, is itself the middle way. So he doesn't just stop with that. Whatever is dependently co-arisen, that is explained to be emptiness. That being a dependent designation. So you could say that emptiness is defined based on Pratītyasamutpāda. So because emptiness depends on something else, that's the emptiness of emptiness itself. And that's the middle way, that there is no extremes. So time itself is empty. So how could you hang anything more on it?
Sentha?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's the thing. John Crook famously saw this saying on the monastery in Hong Kong, which is there is no such thing as time. What then is memory? And that sent him on quite an inquiry. Also, I believe emptiness is really a teaching for us sentient beings. It's nothing. The Buddha doesn't wake up in the morning and look at his refrigerator and see, a sign that says, remember emptiness. It's really for us. And it's what really shows the truth of it is that our minds cling, right? And we label and we judge. And if you look at Pratītyasamutpāda, it shows that our labels and our judgments are false because we're aggregating something and that has many different parts. And so the label has no self-existence, and what underlies it has no self-existence. Just another way of approaching it.
Mm-hmm.
And this is Alan. I was thinking about Indra's net, right? And that Indra's net has it expands in all directions, so it's not necessarily sequential. And so that if it's not necessarily sequential, that can take the time aspect out of it as well.
Right, but I think that while what Michael started this conversation off with, it's not the if A then B, if B then C. It's not linear. And Alan, what you're supporting that in that it's not linear. It's a dependent co-arising of multiple factors coming together and influencing multiple other factors simultaneously. But in that explanation as well, it's not beyond time. That explanation is not beyond time. Even if you consider multiple factors coming together and impacting multiple other factors, it's not beyond time. So without recognizing the emptiness of time, that's a trap. Michael, do you see that?
Yes, I agree. It's something to contemplate. This is where fundamental physics is headed. What is time? What is space? Mm-hmm. And maybe the answer cannot be written down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, but we have two hands, like Rong
Yes.
and Padoma.
Wrong.
Yes, Sentha, I have a question regarding where you talk about craving and clinging. Like I take three examples. Like just take example yesterday. First, I played a mental game that I want to kill the bug, and I kill the bug in my mind. And in action, I have the craving to kill the bug, and I did it. And in the dream, I have the dream that I want to kill the bug, and I did it in my dream. So in the Pratītyasamutpāda, in the causing condition, how can you, what is the judgment of this? I mean, are they equal or are they not equal? Because if you pray back, it seems that all three actions and consequence are the same, because it is all memories, and it's all a function of mind.
So I have to prefix this with karma is supposed to be, karma is this one person's precipitation of the working of Pratītyasamutpāda. If you look at how Pratītyasamutpāda is working on one person as a stream, right? Then you could think of that as karma. So what you're asking is about how karma works, and Pratītyasamutpāda is how karma works as well.
Yeah.
The disclaimer is that thinking that you really truly understand karma is trying to completely understand karma is a recipe for insanity. So this is something that is said, that trying to understand karma in its completeness is a recipe for insanity. So Pratītyasamutpāda is something to tune into and harmonize with. Just like last time we talked about tuning into this, the compassion of Guanyin, into the compassion of the Buddha. Pratītyasamutpāda is tuning in to the functioning of mind and harmonizing with the functioning of mind and working with the functioning of mind. So when it comes to your particular scenario, there's a difference in actually doing something versus thinking about doing something or dreaming about doing something. All of these carry karma, but the intensity of karma is different.
So then we can say that the real action, right, that will bear the most severe consequence.
So karma is not just dependent on action, it's also dependent upon intention and attachment. Attachment is the definition of what makes outflows. So when the Buddha is functioning, it is simply the functioning of the Buddha mind. So if you think about this analogy of a current that I talked about, right? In the ocean, there's like currents, and it's just a functioning of the ocean. So when we are flowing with the ocean, right, there is no karma that's being created. So that's just Buddha mind working with a Buddha mind. When there is resistance, that's when karma is being created. So the resistance comes up as the illusory self. When you take yourself to be separate, and that is what is causing resistance, and it causes resistance to the flow of Pratītyasamutpāda, and karma is being created. So it's not only action. Nagarjuna, actually, I've got to find this. So Nagarjuna says that it is not the action, but it is the actor that creates karma. Let me see if I can find that quote here. So, here, he says, with the cessation of ignorance, action will not arise. So with the cessation of ignorance, action will not arise. So so in Chinese, there is this wu wei, right? So it is not the action itself that causes karma. It is the ignorance within the action. It is the stickiness of the action. It is the self, the attachment to the self in the action that causes karma.
Mhm.
So it's not so much whether you're dreaming of killing a bug or whether you're actually killing a bug. It is the stickiness of it. It is the ignorance behind it that is causing the karma. That said, the Buddha suffered headaches because he killed a fish
Mhm.
in his previous supposedly a very old and wise fish, and he in fact had killed it because somebody was torturing the fish, and he only killed it by hitting it on its head in order to put an end to its suffering. Still, there was a karmic consequence. But as a Buddha, he wasn't creating more karma,
Mhm.
right? So that's so karma is about ignorance, not action, but ignorance that causes karma. And the Buddha doesn't create karma because there is no ignorance, but the Buddha is functioning perfectly. It's not inaction that is the answer to no karma.
Yeah, and now I got it. I think the first is the ignorance, and second is that how the Pratītyasamutpāda, the cause and condition, pray. It is not up to our judgment. It's not to our own. In other words, that's a recipe to insanity. That's you cannot calculate yourself.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last part of what you said. Could you repeat that?
I say that the first is the ignorance. That's the
Mhm.
the most critical in whatever you say. That's the craving and clinging. And second is that the one cannot try to calculate what is the karma, how heavy the karma, because that's what you said. It is a recipe to insanity.
Mm-hmm.
That's not up to the using the using the what they call the wandering thoughts to calculate it.
Right. So yeah, let's not do like a debt calculations. Instead, there is the repentance practice. Okay. Gilbert has a comment, I think.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Just on what you were saying, a clarification of that story that might be helpful is that in a lifetime before Shakyamuni became a Buddha, the fishing village that he was in had landed a great fish that happened to be the king fish, and it was so big that they just pulled it into the shallow water, and people would come up and cut pieces of the fish off and take it home. The Buddha, as a little boy, he came by and hit the fish in the head with a stick 3 times. So for him, his karma was that he had a headache for 3 days. And so he explained to people, well, you're the Buddha, how could you have a karma? And he had this karma. But in a later life, the people from the village were the Shaka clan, who were destroyed by but a neighboring king because they had made fun of him, and they had all were destroyed, even though Shakyamuni had asked Yapa to hold them in their hand to protect him. When he opened his hand was bloody, that he could not overcome the karma of the people of what they had done in terms of the greatness of it. So it's not simply just that the act that happen, but the intensity of the act and the way that one does something. If one does something and hits it, it's a de minimis compared to the harm that somebody did and the intensity and the intentionalness of it. If one squishes a bug, then or steps on a bug with very little idea that they even stepped on a bug, it's different. But if one picks a bug and wants to torture it or takes pleasure in it, it is a totality of all these different aspects of it that bring forth the stronger karma. It's like the same thing as somebody eating lobster and somebody having various lobsters come to the table, or picking out the lobster that one is going to eat. There's much more severity. So we have to look at this in this way. We cannot just simply put it and say that killing a bug is equal to 10 units. You know, it's not that way. It could be killing a bug or a fish is equal to something much greater than even taking the life of a human being. It could take the life of the entire village. So anyway, that's kind of just to kind of look at it, and we use our wisdom to see that part. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Gilbert. Yeah, and then also one more thing that I wanted to thank you so much for that clarification, Gilbert. So in you know, when Gilbert said that, gave you more of the story, the Buddha had killed that fish, but he got away with 3 days of headache, whereas the others who had tortured the fish, you know, they lost their lives. So that's another takeaway about the intentionality that karma is really dependent on. Paloma?
Yes, this is just for Harry. Can you repeat what you said? There is not such thing as time?
Oh, yeah. There's no such thing as time. What then is memory? That's the quote.
What then is memory? All
Yes.
righty, that was my question. Thank you.
Sure.
So Paloma, you wanted to?
No, I
That
asked.
Yeah,
Harry,
you wanted to from Harry. Okay,
Oh.
got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, thank you.
No problem. Harry, you wanted to say something?
Yeah. So there's a lot of there's, I think it's called the niyamas, all the different things. Karma is only one of 5 kind of causative factors. You know, in the sutras, there's the things that grow, and there's chitta, the mind, and there's dharma. You know, I mean, which could go into in greater detail. But in the questions of King Milinda, Nagasena asks, Milinda, the king, asked Nagasena about, are all things determined by karma? And Nagasena says, well, if you take mud and you throw it at a wall, the mud will spatter. And the spattering has to do with physical properties, of course, because there's no ignorance in the mud. No wisdom, no ignorance. And then just one other thing, in clarifying all these causative factors and time, a simple example is when you put the key in the ignition of your car, if you think that when you turn the key, you're making the car go, that's erroneous, because the car wouldn't go if there hadn't been dinosaurs millions of years ago, and if mining hadn't been invented, and the wheel hadn't been invented, and the technology. And even the future roads, if those hadn't been built, so the future kind of comes back to the present, and the past comes back to the present. All of these different factors, and generally speaking, our minds can't deal with all of these multi-determined things. We make a little bit of a decision based on our ignorance. That's it. It's just it's sort of a simple analogy that people, I think, can relate to.
Mm-hmm. So trying to conceptually understand or get karma is hard in the way you just talked about. However, aligning with Pratītyasamutpāda is not that hard.
Oh, well, yeah, but that's, yeah, but it's, I think you also have to recognize that you can't ultimately know the cause of something, because when you identify a cause, that had other causes.
Mhm.
But
And
when-
it's not just a one cause resulting in the one effect either.
right.
So it's
And-
multiple causes resulting in something,
Yeah,
which
and-
in turn have multiple causes and so forth.
Yeah, and it's a wonderful teaching for showing us that the world doesn't revolve around us,
Mhm.
around our ego, right?
Yeah.
We don't determine all these things.
Mhm. Yeah. So I wanted to present this other analogy in like, you know, how do you work with this Pratītyasamutpāda, right? So you could say that take the same analogy of like currents in the ocean, and not just currents in the ocean. There's wind and water, currents, lots of movement, right? All depending on one another. So in this, if you had a sailboat, right? So you could look at this example and see how you live your life, right? You could be, you could be the person, the captain of this, just say that it's a one-person sailboat, okay? So one-person sailboat. I don't know nautical terminology very well, but just bear with me. It's a one-person sailboat, and you can tilt the sails so that you can maneuver the boat to go where you want to. However, it doesn't mean that, if there's a storm happening, right? It doesn't mean that you can enter the storm and do what you want and sail whatever way you want. However, it doesn't also mean that you just let the winds and the ocean currents take you wherever they go, right? So, Pratītyasamutpāda, aligning with Pratītyasamutpāda is about Wu Wei, is about action that is not non-action. It's about action that is in harmony, but it's still action. So the middle way, often we think about the middle way. See what Nagarjuna said, that this itself is the middle way, that dependent Pratītyasamutpāda itself is the middle way. That's what he says. It's that Pratītyasamutpāda itself is the middle way. And the middle way is not a midpoint between two extremes. It is a transcending of those two extremes. So if you think about one way of just being taken, whichever way the currents of life seem to lead you, right? That seems to be not doing anything at all. Or, doing stuff no matter what, the situation is. No matter how the ocean currents are, how the what way the wind is blowing, I will head north, no matter what, right? So that's another extreme. So the middle way between these two extremes is aligning with Pratītyasamutpāda and still steering. That's non-action. There's action that is happening. At the same time, it is non-action. Aligning with Pratītyasamutpāda, tuning into the resonance of mind. Robert.
Interesting you mentioned Pratītyasamutpāda is the middle way and Wu Wei.
Mm-hmm.
Middle way in Chinese is 中道, the middle of the way,
Mm-hmm.
neither extreme. And Wu Wei is it's not really not doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like you stay in the presence, the moment, every moment you are in that moment. And whatever that moment call for, you neither push it, tug it, pull it. It's almost like at the moment, you do what is appropriate. I hesitate to use the word appropriate. It's at that moment. If you are in the presence, most likely you know not to do anything, or you're supposed to do anything. Like someone is about to fall into the sea or off the cliff, you're gonna reach out and grab that person. It's not that you don't do anything, but you have to do something, but only in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Not a moment before, not a moment after, just in the moment. So that's how when I look at Wu Wei, it's not, Wu is no or none. Wei is action or doing something.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not really not doing anything, it's you just do something. That's
Right.
how I interpret when I heard what you were saying just now.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Robert. So Wu Wei is that non-action. Nagarjuna. Of course, he didn't know about Wu Wei, the Chinese concept of Wu Wei, but that's what he's talking about when he says this action. Oh gosh, let me see that for a sec. When he talks about action without ignorance, let's see. With the cessation of ignorance, action will not arise. And the action that will not arise that he's talking about is the Wu Wei. It's the action that is empty of the actor, that is in perfect accordance with Pratītyasamutpāda, with causes and conditions. That is that's Gilbert says like following function. And he says when one hand has a cut, the other hand puts a band-aid on it. Nothing to think. Yes.
What comes to mind to me is flow.
Flow.
Flow, when you're in a flow, you're solving a problem, you're doing something, where the self is completely out of the equation, and things are just happening as they should and need to be, or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Alan.
Sentha?
Mm-hmm.
So one thing, I'm just not to be too much of a stickler, but Wu Wei as non-action is a Taoist term.
Yes.
In Chinese Buddhism, Wu Wei means unconditioned. So in Gilbert's favorite quote, of the all conditioned things, it's I Chia Yo Wei Fa. All conditioned things, are like a dream, an illusion, a bubble, and a shadow. Yeah. So, and it's very interesting to compare the two things. They start to amount to the same thing.
So say this again. So Wu Wei is a Taoist term that I do know about that. However, the same term is not used in Chinese Buddhism.
It has a slightly different meaning of being unconditioned, as opposed to Wu means not, right? And
right, but Wu also means empty, right?
Yes, it certainly can mean empty, but it also, there's also in Chinese Buddhism, there's Yo Wei. I don't know if that exists in Taoism, but Yo Wei means having, actually doing something, having conditions, which is the way of ignorance, right? It's still conditioned. It's a slight, it's an important distinction, but it's very slight.
It's not just empty, it's empty of conditions.
Yes. Well, it's just a standard term for unconditioned.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Harry.
Sure.
Yeah, I'd like to know more. Maybe
Sure.
we'll continue this.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. Ro?
Santha, I think what Harry said, unconditional, this bring me the story about Si who carried the books, right? And then I think that when you are so unified with your mind, that basically you are the world. So I think that whatever you do, it seems that you are not doing. It's all mind.
Mhm.
That's a different level of Wu Wei?
Except that there is no world either. So, did you see that?
No, I say there's a different level of Wu Wei, right? When you're unified, basically,
Right.
you're at that level.
Yes. So I'm saying
you don't have object and subject.
Yeah, there is no world either. So I'm saying it's beyond the unified mind.
Yeah. The answer.
So what happens in unified mind is that you're experiencing this, you're one with the flow, and it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. It's one with the flow. The universe is in harmony and perfect synchrony. There's something so seductive about that, so special. That's unified mind. What's beyond unified mind is that's still your bubble. It's a beautiful bubble burst. All right, Gilbert.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I wanted to share something that Ling Yun, who's here tonight, and maybe if I get the story wrong, she can add it, but it's good for contemplation. It's germane to what you've been talking about, of a story where this one king was unhappy with a couple of his subjects that had stopped to hear this master speaking, and he blinded them and cut off their arms. And in that moment, they were sought the help of the Buddha, and their sight was regained and their arms grew back. And the part that was important was it said the Buddha never moved. This is very profound. What does that mean? We cannot resolve it with trying to look at the conditioned mind, whether we call it Wu Wei or whatever, your way. It doesn't matter. It is something that the profoundness of it belongs to the unconditioned. The unconditioned is mind itself, without any phenomena, which is what you've been talking about, without any time, without anything. And yet that can only happen if the Buddha is this ultimate stillness. There's no answer here as much as for people to contemplate that the unconditioned is beyond words and phrases. Thank you.
Thank you, Gilbert. Ling Yun, do you want to say anything?
Well, yeah. Well, I can. The story itself. There. One thing is the woman who had the arms cut. They from like previous lives, they already had very deep merits in their cultivation, and then it mentioned that the Buddha could show up before these ladies because they have the vows when they were practicing Bodhisattva path, but everything is just appear before within the mind of those ladies, and the Buddha itself never moved.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I just want to add to what Gilbert had said.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was a taste, Gilbert.
I'm sorry?
It was a taste of something. I don't know what it was. It was just a
Well,
taste.
let's put it this way. You have a little bit of a taste to it today. Ling Yun had a great taste to it the other day. She really used it like a huato, like, or not a huato, but say, what does this mean? And the only answer that can come is no answer from the conditioned side.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be the unconditioned.
Mm.
Because
So this, oh, sorry, Gilbert.
No, go ahead. You go ahead, please.
I just want to quote. This was actually from the Great Vana Sutra. In Chinese, it's chapter 16. I don't know whether Harry has found that in English.
What sutra is it?
Yeah,
Say that again. What was the name of the sutra?
Great Nirvana Sutra.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I look forward to exploring this. Thank you so much. Wow. All right. So that there was a treat, Gilbert, that I asked for early on. The treats from the retreat.
Yes, it was something that a lot of people, I allowed them just to talk, and she just kept talking and talking, you know, and telling the story and saying that the Buddha never moved, you know, but you cannot have a true answer to that. It has to be a feeling, a quieting of the mind. And when the mind truly quiets, then this is an unconditioned realization. So this is just something, a treat, so that people can feel something and know how to explore. Everybody's done a very good job tonight of discussing these issues, and we have to be mindful about that. There is not just see it from the conditioned mind, but go beyond the finger and to see the moon. And that's what a lot of people were doing during the retreat, and extending themselves out, especially for Ling Yu. And she really, it was a joy to see that process.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, thank you. So I wanted to, as a practice, practicing tuning into Pratītyasamutpāda. So what made this look like in real life? So I gave you this example, right? You're on a sailboat in the ocean, and the two extremes are you let whatever the winds and the currents carry you wherever, versus you say, I'm going to sail north and I'm headed due north no matter the conditions around me, versus attuning to conditions and causes and performing the action that needs to happen, but as a non-action, meaning an action without ignorance, without an actor causing that resistance, right? So each of us may have our own ways of which extreme we err towards. Some of us may be more just carried away by the currents. Some of us may be like due north, no matter what. What does this look like in your life? What would it mean for you to attune with Pratītyasamutpāda, moment to moment? Not just when you're like on the cushion, not just when maybe the few minutes or the many minutes in your day when you're in Chan. How about the other times? What would it mean to tune in to Pratītyasamutpāda? What does it mean to listen? It's somehow, this tuning into Pratītyasamutpāda is like the listening practice of Guanyin Pusa. To listen almost, to tune in. In order to tune in, there's a listening to Pratītyasamutpāda. Listening to how mind works. So this is what I invite you to do this week in your meditation practice. Listening, tuning in. Yeah. All right. That's the end of the lecture. I was thinking of a meditation. There's a short meditation doing this. Would you be interested? Yeah, so let's do this. There's no other instruction. We'll do like a 10-minute meditation, listening and tuning in to Pratītyasamutpāda. All right, any comments, questions before we end our class? Okay, thank you so much everyone for joining.
Thank you, Sentha.
Thank you, Sentha.
Thank you,
Thank-
Sentha. Good
Thank
night,
you,
everybody.
Sentha. Thank you,
Thank
Gilbert.
you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Sentha.
Thank you, Sentha.
Sentha.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, William, for noticing that I was on mute.
That was my okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Gilbert.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Bye-bye.
joining so much. Bye.